Hello friends, I won't take much of your time. I just ask you to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
My sister always had a flair for stealing spotlights. It didn't matter whether it was my piano recital at 11, my graduation speech at 18, or even my father's retirement party. When she showed up wearing a white sequin dress and announced she'd just been accepted to a modeling agency that turned out to be a scam. Still, nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for the way she hijacked what was supposed to be my night. The night I'd quietly dreamed about for years. The night Ethan was finally going to propose. It was a small dinner, the kind that's supposed to be intimate and warm, where the food is more about the effort than the flavor, and the candles flicker just enough to hide the awkward silences. Ethan had planned it for weeks, booking a little cabin-style restaurant just outside the city, where we could sit around one big wooden table with my parents, his folks, and, of course, Haley, because even when you don't want her around, Haley has a way of making sure she's in the frame, always. She arrived late, as usual, laughing at something on her phone as she air-kissed Mom and flopped into the seat next to Ethan, not even bothering to greet me. I watched her apply lip gloss at the table, then tuck her hair behind her ears with the kind of smug energy that made me wonder if she already knew what was coming. Maybe she had overheard Ethan's plans. Maybe she just sensed that something wasn't about her, and that was unacceptable. The dinner moved forward in uneven waves, wine being poured too quickly, Ethan tapping his leg under the table, my mom asking invasive questions about our future. I could feel the velvet box in Ethan's jacket pocket. It sat there like a live wire, humming with potential. He reached for it once, then thought better of it. My dad raised his glass, a toast. To family, he said, and for a second I almost believed this would go smoothly. Then, right as Ethan began to speak, his voice low and trembling, the way it gets when he's about to say something that matters, Haley raised both arms in the air and shrieked, "I'm pregnant!" The room froze, not just paused, froze. My mother gasped. Ethan blinked mid-sentence, and my father choked on a piece of bread. Then, as if on cue, Haley clapped a hand to her mouth and laughed. "Oops," she giggled. Did I ruin something? There was no apology in her voice. No actual surprise, just that grinning, wide-eyed innocence she's mastered since we were kids. That fake shock meant to disguise how calculated the move really was. I knew right then, without a shred of doubt, that she had done it on purpose. She didn't just want attention, she wanted mine. Ethan's hand slipped away from the pocket. The box remained closed. He gave me a look, half apology, half panic, and I smiled, big and bright and rehearsed. The kind of smile I've worn for decades around Haley. I clapped politely, leaned forward, and said, "Wow, that's huge news. Congratulations." I don't remember the rest of dinner clearly. It became a blur of Haley talking about how shocked she was and how they weren't even trying, how Lucas, her on-and-off boyfriend, was over the moon. My mother wept, dabbing her eyes with a cloth napkin, whispering, "My first grandchild," as if I'd never existed. Ethan tried to circle back, to get the moment back. He reached for my hand under the table, but I pulled away and reached for my wine instead. By dessert, I had made a decision. Not about Ethan, about Haley. She thought she had stolen something from me. She thought she'd pulled off another one of her perfectly timed distractions. But what she didn't realize is that I've grown teeth since we were kids. Sharp ones. The kind that don't just bite back. They tear slowly. On the drive home, Ethan apologized 5 times. He gripped the steering wheel like it had wronged him personally. "I was going to do it," he said. "I really was, right before she—" "Jesus, Rachel, I'm so sorry." I turned to him and smiled. The real kind this time. Cold, sure, but honest. "It's okay," I said. "She gave us a gift tonight." He glanced at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. That night, after we got back to our apartment, we didn't talk about the dinner. We didn't even unpack. Instead, I told him to hand me his phone. "Let's take a photo," I said. "Right now." He blinked. "You want to announce it?" I nodded, pulling him to the living room and positioning us in front of the fireplace. I kissed him softly, pressed my left hand against his chest, and smiled for the camera. Then I posted it. A beautiful shot. Warm lighting. We looked happy. No, we looked victorious. The caption. Some people fake big news to hide small lives. We prefer the real thing. No ring in sight. No date mentioned. No direct announcement. Just enough to get people talking. And oh, they did. By midnight, Haley had called me 3 times. I didn't answer. Let her wonder. Let her sit with that. Let her try to figure out if she'd really ruined something or just started something much, much worse. I don't believe in coincidence anymore. Not after growing up in the same house as Haley. She didn't just stumble into drama. She orchestrated it like a maestro with a conductor's wand dipped in venom. So when I posted that photo, Ethan and I wrapped in warm shadows, my hand gently placed against his chest, our faces lit with a kind of knowing peace. I already knew what it would do to her. The caption wasn't for the strangers who liked and scrolled. It wasn't even for our mutual friends or our old high school acquaintances who kept us on their feeds just to feel better about their own lives. It was for Haley. A message wrapped in a smile, sharp, personal, and utterly silent. By noon the next day, the reactions were rolling in. So happy for you two, and finally were the tame ones. But buried among the congratulations were the ones that stung like paper cuts to Haley's ego. Nice timing, one said. Way to rise above the noise, said another. And then the one that probably pushed her over the edge. Now that's what I call real news. She texted me first, just 2 words. Not funny, I ignored it. She followed up with a longer message about how this was supposed to be a joyful time for her and how my post was passive-aggressive and hurtful. I didn't respond to that either. Because when you've spent your whole life being the quiet one, the rational one, the forgiver, silence becomes a kind of superpower. Let her stew. Let her wonder if the silence was indifference, or if it was the first ripple of a tidal wave coming her way. Ethan, bless his heart, wasn't sure what to do. He was supportive, of course, but I could tell he was caught between admiring my calm and fearing what it meant. Do you want to tell her we weren't trying to one-up her? He asked over coffee, fiddling with his mug, like it might whisper the right answer. I shook my head slowly. She knows, I said. That's what's killing her. Later that day, I posted something subtle to my Instagram story, a photo of an old college journal I had found while unpacking books, with the caption, "Funny how the people who ruin the most expect to be celebrated the loudest." It was vague, non-committal, but I knew she'd see it. I knew she'd stew over it. Within 15 minutes, I had a message from our cousin Jess asking, "Wait, is that about Haley?" I didn't answer that one either. It didn't stop there. The next night, I posted a throwback photo of Ethan and me at the beach, 2 summers ago, sunburned and happy, with a caption that read, "When love is real, it doesn't have to scream." I could practically hear Haley's nails clicking against her phone screen as she typed her reply. This time she called. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Are you seriously trying to make me look bad?" she asked, skipping pleasantries, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I kept my tone level, friendly even. "I don't have to try, Haley. You do that on your own." There was silence, then the sound of her inhaling, steadying herself. "You think you're better than me," she said. I didn't answer, 'cause that wasn't a question. It was a confession, and it was probably the truest thing she'd said in years. That night, I was getting ready for bed when I saw a message request pop up from Lucas, Haley's boyfriend, or maybe ex, hard to keep track with them. We weren't close. He and I had only spoken a few times over the years, mostly during family holidays or birthday dinners where he seemed uncomfortable and vaguely amused by Haley's antics. He had the look of someone always calculating how much longer he had to stay before he could fake a phone call and slip out. His message was short but strange. "Can we talk? Something's off." I stared at it for a full minute before I answered. "Sure, what's going on?" He replied almost instantly, asking if we could meet for coffee, somewhere neutral. He didn't want to talk over text. That alone made me nervous. But I agreed. I gave him the name of a quiet cafe near my office and told him I'd meet him the next morning. I didn't tell Ethan, not yet, because I wasn't sure what Lucas wanted to say, and I didn't want to start a fire without knowing which way the wind was blowing. But my stomach had that familiar twisted feeling I always got before one of Haley's truths came unraveled. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to Ethan's breathing beside me, and wondering if maybe, just maybe, this whole thing was bigger than a ruined proposal. Maybe it wasn't just about jealousy or spotlight theft, or Haley's compulsive need to be the center of attention. Maybe there was something underneath it all, something I hadn't seen coming. And if there was, I was going to find it. And when I did, I was going to burn it clean. The cafe was one of those quiet, out-of-the-way places where the background music is low, the coffee is overpriced, and no one pays attention to anyone else unless you're sobbing or shouting. I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee I wouldn't drink, and sat by the window watching the street. Lucas showed up exactly on time, which struck me as uncharacteristically punctual for someone who always seemed vaguely stoned or distracted whenever I saw him with Haley. He looked tired, worse than tired, actually. He looked like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. His jaw was tight, his eyes shadowed, and his hands trembled slightly as he stirred his coffee, even though he didn't add anything to it. We made small talk for less than a minute, both of us aware it was just a formality. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, and said, "I don't think she's pregnant." I didn't react. Not immediately. I just stared at him, letting the words settle between us, heavy and sharp. He must have taken my silence for disbelief, because he kept talking, faster now, like the words had been trying to claw their way out of his throat for days. "I mean, she told me, yeah," he said, rubbing a hand over his face. "She said it after we had a stupid fight about rent, out of nowhere. Just, 'I'm pregnant,' like it was some kind of mic drop, and I didn't question it at first because, hell, what do I know? But then things didn't add up." I watched him carefully, noting the way he avoided eye contact when he said that last part. "She wouldn't let me come to her appointments," he continued, "said I was making it too stressful. She kept saying she didn't want to tell anyone yet, not even our families, but then she goes and announces it at your dinner in front of everyone." There was a bitterness in his voice now, not just confusion, betrayal, maybe even shame. "She wanted an audience," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. Lucas nodded slowly, pressing his fingers to his temples. "I found a test in the trash a couple days ago. Negative. Still had the wrapper and everything. I asked her about it, and she said it was old from before. But then I remembered. She told me she found out only 2 weeks ago, so either she's lying about when she found out, or she's just lying." He looked up at me then, his eyes clearer than they had been when he walked in. "I don't know what she's trying to do, but something about this feels wrong. Really wrong." I leaned back, folded my arms, and exhaled slowly. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, like this was the confirmation I'd been waiting for. But another part, deeper, more tired, just felt sick. Because this wasn't a game anymore. This wasn't just another attention grab or social sabotage. This was a lie with weight behind it. A lie that could anchor someone for years, and that someone had nearly been me. Lucas hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "She left this voicemail a couple nights ago. Didn't mean to, I think. Forgot to hang up." He tapped the screen and slid the phone across the table. I pressed it to my ear and listened. Haley's voice came through, muffled but clear enough. She was laughing at first, talking to someone else. Then her tone shifted, turned irritated. "He totally bought it," she said. "I just need a couple more weeks, then I'll figure out how to make it disappear. God, I swear, men are so stupid when you give them a reason to panic." There was more, background noise, another voice I didn't recognize. But that sentence stuck like a shard of glass in my chest. I handed the phone back and stared at my untouched coffee, the surface gone cold and still. Lucas looked ashamed, not just of her, but maybe of himself too. "I don't know what to do," he said. I did. I knew exactly what needed to be done. Don't confront her yet, I said, my voice steady. Let me take care of it. He raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Maybe he saw something in my face that made him realize this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a decision. On my way home, I couldn't stop replaying that voicemail in my head. The laughter, the calculated way she said, make it disappear, like the pregnancy was just another outfit she could take off once it stopped serving its purpose. It was more than cruel. It was psychopathic. I got home, found Ethan in the kitchen chopping vegetables like nothing had changed, and walked straight to the bedroom without saying a word. I needed time to think. Not because I wasn't sure what to do, but because I wanted to do it right. Later that night, Ethan sat beside me on the bed, holding his phone. "You've been quiet," he said. I looked at him and thought about telling him everything, right then and there. About Lucas, about the voicemail, about Haley's whole twisted performance. But something in me said wait, not because I wanted to protect Ethan, but because I wanted to control when and how it all came down. So I leaned in, kissed him softly, and said, "She's not done yet, but neither am I." And I meant it. The strange thing about revenge is how quiet it becomes once it starts working. There's no dramatic music, no thunderclap when the first piece falls out of place. Just this subtle shift in the air, like the silence between breaths before someone realizes they're choking. After Lucas gave me the voicemail, I didn't act immediately. That would have been too easy, too reactive. I needed her to believe everything was normal, that the lie she built was still standing, untouched, waiting to be lived in. So I waited. I smiled when she called. I liked her social media posts, and I sent her a message asking if she needed help shopping for maternity clothes. She answered with a photo of a onesie that said, "Born to be fabulous," followed by a winking face and a heart. I stared at it for a long time before responding, and when I did, I told her it was adorable. I told her she would make a great mom. I told her exactly what she wanted to hear. What she didn't know was that 2 days earlier, I had sent the voicemail to a friend of mine who worked in HR at the Family Counseling Center, where Haley had recently started interning. It wasn't just a casual gig. This was the position she'd been bragging about for months, the one she claimed would launch her career in healing trauma, the one that, in some twisted poetic irony, required absolute emotional integrity. My friend didn't say much when I sent it. Just one message, noted. That was enough. The collapse began quietly, as I suspected it would. Haley stopped posting every day, which for her was a red flag all by itself. Then the smiling selfies turned into recycled photos from earlier months. No belly shots, no sonogram updates. When my mother asked her if she wanted help planning a baby shower, Haley said she was not ready to share the journey publicly yet. That was the phrase she used, like pregnancy was some kind of personal brand rollout. I watched my mother's face twist with confusion and disappointment. It wasn't sinking in yet. Not fully, but the cracks were forming. Lucas, for his part, kept his distance. I told him to. He moved back in with his brother and stopped replying to her late-night texts, though she didn't stop sending them. They started as pleading, "Please, let's talk, and I need you right now." Then they turned bitter. "You've always been a coward, and you're walking away from your own child." But the tone didn't matter anymore. The truth was already out there, and it was taking shape like mold beneath the paint. You couldn't see it right away, but eventually you could smell it. Meanwhile, Ethan proposed again. Quietly, just the two of us in the park where we had our first date. No ring box theatrics, no candlelit declarations. He just took my hand as we walked past the lake, stopped by the old iron bench, and said, "I still want to spend my life with you, even if your family's a mess, especially because of it." I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just smiled, kissed him, and said, "Okay." Not yes, just okay, because I wasn't finished yet, and I didn't want him, or anyone else, to think this meant I was settling down, closing the book. This wasn't a beginning. It was part of the middle. And in the middle, the fire's still burning. Haley's job let her go by the end of the week. Officially, it was phrased as a misalignment of values, which, considering the source material, was as gentle as they could make it. She posted a cryptic story about outgrowing toxic environments and then disappeared from social media for a full 48 hours, which, for Haley, was like vanishing into the Bermuda Triangle. When she came back, her tone had changed. No more pregnancy updates, no more coy mentions of motherhood, just selfies with captions like, "Learning to love myself again," and "Healing isn't linear." She hadn't admitted anything, of course. She never would. That wasn't her style. But the silence around her was speaking louder now, and people were beginning to listen. Then came the family group chat explosion. It started with my father, who until this point had remained relatively silent about the entire situation. Posting a link to a parenting article, followed by a message that simply said, "Something doesn't add up." My mother tried to deflect, as always, insisting that Haley was under a lot of pressure and that now is not the time to pile on. But it was too late. Haley didn't respond at all, and in her absence, the room started to shift. That night, I sat on the couch with Ethan, the ring box unopened on the coffee table, and scrolled through the comments on our engagement post. The ones that had once annoyed me, finally, and took him long enough, now felt like punctuation marks to a story no one else fully understood. I wanted to write a follow-up post, something simple but surgical, but instead, I drafted something and saved it in my notes. Truth doesn't need to shout, it just waits, and eventually the noise collapses under its own weight. I didn't post it, not yet, because just as I was about to lock my phone, I saw the notification, an email, no subject line, no name, just a message that read, "You think you're the only one with secrets?" I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen, my breath catching in my throat. I thought I had control. I thought I had all the cards. But that one sentence told me that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one keeping things buried. And that's when I knew this wasn't the end. Not even close. For a long time, I stared at that email like it was a relic dug out of wet soil, strange, threatening, and soaked in a past I didn't want to revisit. The words themselves weren't long, not more than a simple sentence, and yet they carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. You think you're the only one with secrets? That question, posed without punctuation, without context, without even a signature, felt less like a message and more like a match, lit and dropped onto the trail of gasoline I'd been laying quietly behind me for weeks. I didn't panic, not exactly, but I felt the stillness that comes before something gives way. It was that slow crawling feeling in the stomach, the one that tells you whatever sense of control you believed you had was only borrowed, not owned. I didn't respond. I didn't even mention it to Ethan. I sat in bed that night, the laptop screen glowing beside me, my fingers idle on the keyboard, and just tried to breathe like someone who hadn't suddenly realized she'd been walking on ice much thinner than she thought. The thing about secrets is that they're rarely solitary. Like mold or guilt, they grow in the dark and they invite company. And yes, I had my own. They weren't elaborate, they weren't criminal, but they were mine, and they were real. And there was one in particular I had buried so deep I forgot it still had a pulse. It wasn't anything recent. It wasn't even Ethan related. It was something from before, the kind of thing that seemed small at the time, but changed everything afterward. In college, my roommate went missing for 24 hours after a party. She turned up unharmed, confused, and swore she had blacked out. There were whispers about something being slipped into her drink, and the whole dorm buzzed with theories and tension. I had been at that party too. I had seen her with someone, a guy whose name I didn't know then but would later hear muttered by campus security. I remembered seeing her crying barefoot, trying to find her purse near the fire pit. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. I went back to my dorm and locked the door because I was drunk and tired and told myself it wasn't my business. The next day, when she asked me if I remembered anything, I lied. I told her I hadn't seen her all night. She thanked me for not making a big deal about it. And I never spoke of it again. It wasn't guilt that drove me now. It was recognition. Haley wasn't the only one who used silence to shape a narrative. We were not so different. I just dressed mine in righteousness. But back to the email, I didn't reply. Instead, I posted the final photo. It wasn't a ring shot. It wasn't a smiling couple's selfie or a clever quote about love outlasting storms. It was a montage, edited together in black and white, muted, haunting. It began with a video clip from my birthday 2 years ago. Ethan and I were cutting cake while Haley, off to the side, accidentally spilled wine on my dress. Everyone laughed then. In the second clip, Ethan tried to give a toast at my mother's anniversary party, and Haley started a fake coughing fit so loud no one heard him. In the third, Haley filmed me dancing alone at a wedding while she narrated with, "Look who's single and thriving," which she posted to her story for 24 hours before deleting it. The final clip was the dinner, the announcement, her voice piercing through Ethan's sentence like a blade. "I'm pregnant!" Then the laugh, that shrill, pointed laugh. The whole video lasted 45 seconds. The caption was simple. We all have background noise. Some of us just learned to turn the volume down. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't allow comments. I let it hang there, still and bare, like a warning bell. The silence afterward was its own kind of music. By evening, Haley texted once, "You're sick." I didn't reply. Later that week, she left town. No warning, no fanfare, just gone. Lucas told me she moved in with an aunt upstate, deleted all her socials, left her job for good, claimed she needed to reset and find her peace. I imagine she's somewhere right now trying to start over. She'll spin it into a story about spiritual growth, maybe even write a memoir if she thinks she can sell it. That's what she does. She performs her reinventions until people forget the shape of the original. As for me, I didn't rush the wedding. Ethan asked a few times whether I wanted to start planning, but I always said later. Not because I didn't love him, but because something in me wasn't ready. Maybe I just needed to sit with the aftershock of it all. Maybe I needed to see if the silence that followed would settle into something peaceful, or if it was just the quiet before another storm. I still think about that email sometimes, the one with no name. I don't know if it was Haley or Lucas or someone else altogether. Maybe it was nobody. Maybe it was me sending something to myself in a moment of self-loathing. But the truth it hinted at still hangs there, unanswered. You think you're the only one with secrets? Maybe that's what this whole thing was about. Not love, not betrayal, not even revenge. Just two sisters with a lifetime of secrets, daring each other to speak first. And neither of us ever did.